Washington this week. You're a part of the House Oversight Committee. There was a hearing this week where the mayors of 4 so-called sanctuary cities were grilled. I want to play a very quick bit of something that you definitely had to share during that hearing. Take a listen.
Have any of you been made aware of any immigrant that has had 34 felony convictions that has still been able to roam around in your cities? Anyone?
No, ma'am.
I mean, Congresswoman, it's true. I just talked about the hypocrisy from the GOP. They're so quick to want to round up people on the streets. They don't really even bother to care, if they look brown or black or whatever, it's okay. But in this instance, you do have a 34 felony convicted felon that lives in the Oval Office if they need the address.
You know, Michelle Alexander's sitting somewhere now, the writer of the New Jim Crow. I know she's sitting somewhere, really having a hard time sleeping, hard time listening to this sister continue to bring up felons, continue to talk disparagingly about people with convictions. It just seems ironic that a civil rights or justice, whatever she used to do back in the day, Jasmine Crockett, that is, would harp on that as much as she has. And we all know that Trump would have never been convicted of anything if he was a regular citizen. We all know what's politically motivated. But, of course, Jasmine Crockett is talking to a group of people that are spoon-fed on a daily basis, talking points a la the Democratic Party. And, so reality hasn't seeped in that most people don't give a shit about that, and they understand, they're smart enough to know it was just a mechanism you tried to use to stop him from being president. And he's president again, so there it is. But let's Jasmine Crockett go.
I'm happy to give it to him. But what is going on here in terms of trying to kind of exact some type of pressure and a pound of flesh out of these mayors?
Yeah, so first of all, shout out to all the mayors, and I am saying all the mayors. It was definitely interesting to listen to the mayor of New York, but nevertheless, I will say that the mayors as a whole, they really did kind of stand their ground.
That's disgusting that she has a picture of Shirley Chisholm up there next to herself. It's like, damn. I see no relation, no coordination other than pigmentation
Against what they were attempting to do to them. And so I really do applaud them. They were coming up with baseless statistics on crime. And literally they brought the mayor of Boston, Mayor Wu, who is absolutely ranked as the safest large city in the country. And they were trying to lecture her on crime and immigrants. It was absolutely insane. And so
you know what? I want to talk about this, and once again, I'm glad that Jasmine Crockett's given me the opportunity to focus on this, guys. Jasmine Crockett, when they was talking to Mayor Wu of Boston, they weren't just talking about crime, they were talking about money. Money that was spent in her city to house, feed, shelter, clothe, vaccinate, provide security for transportation, all types of living arrangements for migrants, undocumented migrants and migrants. She didn't even know how much money she spent. She had no facts and figures, any data whatsoever about how much money that was coming out of taxpayer money going to allocated for migrants. It wasn't just about crime. And it's funny that you would focus on that. It's like you are cherry picking the narrative here. Let's be clear. Boston, Massachusetts has a black population. You would think a woman of your, familiarity with social justice issues, with civil rights issues, with a picture of Shirley Chisholm in the background wouldn't have to be told this, but Boston, Massachusetts has notoriously been unhelpful and unaccommodating to Black Americans. There was a study done back in 2015 where it shows that the average Black Boston, Massachusetts resident had a net worth of $8. That was compared to the $247,000 of the average white Bostonian. I got a feeling that Mayor Wu spent more than $8 on migrants. Yeah, because Chicago they did. Chicago spent $500 million. New York spent $6.9 billion. Yeah, Chicago $500 million. New York, 6.9 billion. Yeah, that's what it was. So I got a feeling that Mary Wu of Boston spent more than $8. Now, to be fair, in the last couple of years, things have increased somewhat for Black Americans. Now, Black Americans are at a whopping $11,000 net worth, the average Black American in Boston. And white American has dropped to just under 200,000. But as you can see, there's still a huge disparity between Black and white in Boston. And it's kind of ridiculous that you would focus on crime, not economics. Because they weren't there just to talk about crime. They were there to talk about how the migrant population, being a sanctuary city, how it impacts the citizens and what has been the overall impact on the city in general, not just the crime. That's one question, but not the full story. In fact, I'm much more focused on the economics. And I think all of Black America needs to be focused on economics. And I would think you, as has been touted as being a possible candidate in 2028, who's on every show, every time I turn around, and constantly throwing out black concerns, and repeatedly mentioning civil rights and what your people have been through. And I seen you showcasing on the House floor, just repeatedly waxing poetic about Black people. It's like your focus is definitely not Black, and particularly not about Black Bostonians. So just so that we're clear, Mary Wu was asked how much money you spent on the migrants, and she couldn't even tell us.
Mayor Wu, in the city of Boston, how much did you spend?
We don't ask about immigration status and delivering city
You don't
services,
ask
so
about
we
how
don't
much
have
money
that
the city
number.
of Boston has spent on illegal immigration?
We
Are you
don't
out of your
distinguish
mind?
between immigration status.
Do you
as
manage
part
your
of our
budget
city
or not,
policies.
Mayor Wu?
That is how we keep
Mayor
our city
Wu,
safe.
do you manage
we
your
have
budget or
the
not?
numbers to prove it. I manage my budget. I have a AAA bond rating dating back 10 years.
So to the city of Boston,
budget.
just understand that your mayor does not care how much of your resources she has spent on people who are not citizens
The city
of
of Boston
the city of
is
Boston.
sick of having
I'm reclaiming
people
my
outside
time.
Boston
Mr.
telling
Bear,
us what
Mr.
we
Bear, I have
need.
a question for you because I
But I know it was more than the amount of money that Boston spent on Black people. Let's keep going. It's great to be animated, Jasmine Crockett, but facts are our friends. Let's use a couple of them.
That was why I brought out the hypocrisy, and to keep them from trying to come after me and say, oh, I'm engaging in personalities by talking about Trump, I did not mention his name. So I decided that I would work through or around the rules and make sure.
It always seems like she's trying to run out the clock. Does she ever prep for a single interview? Like, I'm serious, man. My Jasmine Crockettes, the Crockettes that are out there. Like, does she ever prep for anything? Does she ever have anything canned to say so she doesn't do this shit? Which is just say things that no one cares about for like 3 times in a row, the same thing. What is she even talking about here?
That I laid out that as they are so outraged by these immigrants and the crime that they're bringing, and not to mention city law enforcement, local law enforcement, they are always going after crime. And they don't say, oh, you committed a murder. Oh, but you're an immigrant. Well, let me let you go. Right. So they are always focused on crime. They continue to say things like the illegals and that they.
We're not just focused on murder. We're focused on other things like assaults. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but most people who commit assault, or even people that commit murder for that instance, they don't usually wait around for the cops to come. So the real barometer of how many illegals or undocumented people commit crime is not going to be how many got arrested. Because I would assume that if you're in the country illegally, if you commit a crime, high on your agenda would be not getting caught. But I know you're not really concerned about that. You're here to do talking points and advocate for your true advocates. Immigrants. And if not them, the LGBTQIA. Which I got no problem with. I just wish you would enlighten viewers so that they understand where your priorities lie. And stop pretending and stop using the currency of blackness to project this notion that you care about Black people. Because your advocacy is not about Black people. Your data is not about Black people. Only thing about Black people is virtue signaling and using our pain in order to help your party. in the back Republicans off your ass, which ain't the same thing.
Broke the law coming in. But what they're not telling the American people is that it is a civil violation. It is not a criminal violation to enter the country illegally. It's not a criminal. It's a crime. It's not a crime, which is why they're so frustrated, because they really want our local law enforcement to go out and round up people when they could be looking out for the murderers and the sexual abusers, as well as the...
Okay, so let's stop her right there. Jasmine Crockett, I thought she was a lawyer. Maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe I'm thinking about somebody else, because it'd be unfortunate that if you're a lawyer and not know the law. Illegally entering the United States is a crime. In how nations handle border security, there are rules. Okay, so let's work this down. Under U.S. law, illegal entry is explicitly a criminal offense. Title 8, USC 1325 states that entering the country without authorization, say, by crossing the border outside a port of entry is a federal misdemeanor for first offense. Maybe you meant to say it was not a felony, because you like saying felony, felony, felony. Maybe that's what you want to say. So the first offense is not a felony. Maybe that's what you meant. Like I said, once again, it would be good if you would prep for these interviews, because it's like you just show up and just say anything. It's like you hit the blunt on the balcony, then you come in and you do a live stream or Zoom, and you don't know what you just say anything. So just to be clear, Title 8 USC 1325 states that entering the country without authorization by crossing the border outside a port of entry is a federal misdemeanor for first offense. The first time it's a misdemeanor, punishable by up to 6 months in jail, a fine, or both. Repeat offenders can face felony charges, with penalties climbing to 2 years in prison. Crockett's arguments seem to lean on a distinction between civil and criminal violations. And I guess that's what it is, so it could just be being disingenuous and gaslighting people? Maybe that's it. I don't know. Overstaying a visa, for instance, is treated as a civil matter under immigration law, subject to deportation rather than jail time. Yeah, because you went through a process. But that's a clear distinction between the two, right? So being undocumented but having a visa, that's not the same thing, right? Because you are documented, you just expired. That's slightly different, okay? Crossing the border illegally isn't just unlawful presence. It's an act of entry that's been criminally codified since at least 1929. So it's been a law in the book since 1929, even before you and I were born, Jasmine. It's not merely a civil slap on the wrist, as Jasmine here is gaslighting people to believe. And most people who heard this video or saw this clip called bullshit as soon as they saw it, because they knew it wasn't true. What are all these people doing in ICE detention centers if it's not a crime? You know, I was just doing a segment just before this where the Department of Homeland Security, the Secretary, Kristi Noem, was just talking about, you know, people being incarcerated for it. What are you talking about? So somebody's lying. Either the Department of Homeland Secretary is lying or Jasmine Crockett's lying. Oh, I'm about to go with Jasmine Crockett's lying or incompetent. Statistics back this up with real enforcement numbers. Fiscal year 2019, under a zero tolerance push, federal prosecutors for illegal entry under 1325 hit over 106,000 cases. Those cases were criminal, not civil. Okay? So yeah, Jasmine Crockett's full of crock. Or crack. Maybe it's Crockett. Maybe we should call her Jasmine Crockett, because she's sounding real cracky right now. Okay. You know, you might argue that the focus should be on real criminals, murderers, abusers, rather than border hoppers, but that sidesteps the point. Illegal entry is a crime by statute. prosecuted at scale and treated seriously worldwide. Saying it's not a crime isn't just a stretch, it's flat out wrong. The U.S. is not an outlier, by the way, guys. We're not the only country that, protects its borders. It's in line with global nations. If you're pushing a policy shift, that's fine. But state the record clearly. You want to move away from criminalizing, from the statute that criminalizes illegal entry, not saying it doesn't exist. Accuracy does matter. Words matter. Choose different ones. Yeah. For instance, Australia has a Migration Act back in 1958. It makes unauthorized entry a criminal offense under Section 233. Just I was looking at other countries that do it. So, yeah. Even Canada, because I know you were rooting for Canada recently. You were saying that Canada, you were hoping that Trudeau beat the shit out of Trump or something. You were rooting for Canada. They have a law too. And they're seen as lenient, but they criminalize illegal crossing under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, Section 124, which fines or jails up to a year. And they've wrapped up their deportations. So, those other countries, they don't just shrug it off. Even your friends in Canada don't shrug it off and call it a civil matter. Just kind of funny that you would think that we should. Anyway, guys, yeah, I just wanted to address Jasmine Crockett because what she's been saying, what she's been able to get away with. And this time, we did not use the 1-minute clip where she was totally wrong. I also wanted to throw in the fact about Boston because she was wrong again. Jasmine Crockett is wrong a lot. And if she's the face of the Democratic Party, it's going to make my job of getting black people to lead the Democratic Party a whole lot easier. So keep up the good work. Perfect. You made it to the end of the video. I appreciate you. Now, Google thinks this next video is going to be perfect for you. It's right up your alley. So click the next video, watch that with me, and let's keep this politics going. You're built for this.